Hi everyone, today we are working on the Avery and Mama Avery patterns. Before we begin, please note the notched edges on your back bodice piece. You will have one here along the top arm side and then one here along the center back. I've gone ahead and sewn one of the back bodice pieces to the front bodice at the shoulder seam and side seam. Let's repeat with the other back bodice piece. Place the other back bodice piece on top of the front bodice, right sides together, matching at the shoulder seam and along the side seams. Pin in place and sew with your serger or sewing machine. Now it's time for the more difficult part of the tutorial. I've already gone ahead and quartered my armband. Next, we are going to quarter our arm side. To do so, we need to find those notches I mentioned earlier. We're going to start with the bodice, the back bodice that is on top. So that would be this one for me. Yours might be opposite. I'm going to go ahead and place a pin at the notched edge along the center seam of the top back bodice. Next, I'm going to find the other notched edge that is along the same arm side that I'm working with. So for me, again, that's going to be the one on this side. So I'm just going to fold the back bodice up and find that notched edge that is on the top of the arm side. Again, I'm going to place a pin or a clip at that point. Just makes it easier for me to find those points. We are now going to match both of these notches together with right sides together. Once you have matched those two notches together, simply follow along until you find the center point. Once you find the center point, place a pin or a clip at that point. Next, we're going to go ahead and find the quarter points of that arm side. To do so, match one of the notched edges to the center point of the arm side. Again, follow along until you find the fold and place a clip at that point. Next, you are going to place the other notched edge at the center point of the arm side, and again at the fold, place a pin or a clip. You can now open up the arm side. It might look a little bit confusing, but I promise it will work. Now that our armbands and arm side are quartered, we're going to go ahead and sew our armband to our arm side. First, we need to match the quarter points of the armband to the arm side. Start by taking one edge of the armband and matching it up to the notched edge of the arm side. Then match one quarter point of the armband to the quarter point of the arm side. Next, match the center point of the armband to the center point of the arm side. Match the last quarter point of the armband to the last quarter point of the arm side, and then finish with the opposite edge of the armband to the opposite notch. Go ahead and sew along the arm side with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, attaching the band to the arm side. You will need to stretch the armband slightly to fit. Do not stretch the actual arm side of the bodice. Okay, I've gone ahead and pressed my armband and top stitched along my armband, as you can see here. This part might confuse you guys as well. If you have your bodice flipped out, or if it got confusing what was up, what was down while you were sewing the armband to the arm side, the easiest thing I find to do is to find the center, so the center of the front bodice, lay that down with right side up, and just flip the back bodice pieces back into place so that the wrong side is facing up. Sorry, I'm using double brush poly, so of course it sticks to everything. And now we're back at where we started, and we are ready for the second side, or the second arm side, I should say. And to do this side, I'm not going to go through all the steps, but I will show you how to find those notches again. It will be slightly different on this one. So now we have the top bodice. We're going to find the notched edge along the top of the arm side here. We would pin in place. And then again, you want to find the matching notch on this arm side. So you would fold it down. And this time you have to fold it down a little bit farther to find the notched edge that's along the center of the bodice that's underneath. So once you find that notch, again, you are going to match those two notches with right sides together, find the center point, and then find the quarter points. Once you've done this, you will attach the armband to that arm side again, and then top stitch in place if you would like. Okay, now that our bands are attached, we are going to work on the center seam of the upper back bodice. To do so, you are going to need to open up the upper back bodice so that the right sides are facing up. I find it easiest to work with the bodice still wrong sides out versus right sides out. And then you're just going to take the top edge here. This is going to be your center back seam of your back bodice. And you're just going to pin those together, right sides together. You're going to continue until you get to the raw edges of the band. And you're just going to fold it out so that it's nice and flat and pin in place. You can go ahead and add one more pin or clip along this seam. Depending on how big of a size you're making, this portion will be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. And you're going to just go ahead and sew this together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, now the upper back bodice seam is sewn together, and it will look a little funny. You're going to think that you sewed something upside down or the wrong way, but I promise this is how it's meant to look. Make sure that you bar tacked your serger tail in place if you use a serger. And now we are ready to sew along the back bodice center seam at the bottom, or we're going to hem that open if you are making the open top. Okay, now we are going to be sewing up the lower center back bodice seam. To do so, you are going to take the top back bodice and you're going to fold it out so that the right side is showing. Bring the bottom back bodice over to match that seam with right sides together. So here's the right side, and I'm going to be matching it to the right side of the other back bodice. So this is the center seam of the back bodice. And I'm going to match them at the top at the banded part. Then I'm going to match along the seam line. Until I get to the very bottom. And then I'm going to just sew this seam together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, you have completed the hardest part of the tutorial. You can see now that the center seam is sewn together, and again, it's going to look a little funny here where the bands match, but I promise that is correct. If you hemmed the center back seam open so that your top is an open top, you would have just hemmed each center seam by pressing 1/2 inch towards the wrong side and edge stitching that seam in place, and then tacking the center back together right at that band. So you would just be sewing it just together right at the band. And you can see the tutorial pictures for that. Flip your bodice right side out now. You'll see on the front side that the arm sides are finished with a band. The neckline is not complete yet. And on the back side, you'll see that your twist is complete. Go ahead and hem the bottom of your top or dress. Add the neckband, and then I will show you how to tack your band in place if you want. Okay everyone, we are almost done creating our Averys. You could leave as is, but you will notice that on the bottom bodice side, so the bodice that is underneath or crosses underneath, the band on the outside arm side will want to flip down. And to prevent that, we can do a little tack. You're going to want to think that you should tack the top bodice on this side because this is the band that is flipping down. You're going to want to think you should just pull this out and tack it, but that's going to reduce the drape on the back of your Avery. So we don't want to do it on that side. We actually want to tack it on the center seam of the back bodice. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the center seam of your back bodice, the upper center seam, right where the bands meet. When we find that, you're going to take the band that is on the top, so the bodice that is on the top, crossing over. For me, it's this side. It could be that side for you, depending on how you created your bodice. You're then going to just take about 2 finger widths or about 1 inch down, and you're just going to place that top band on top of the bottom band, about 1 inch down. And you're going to pin it in place right along the seam allowance, or I'm using my top stitching line because I top stitched. And I'm just going to tack, so I'm going to go back and forth just a couple times right on that spot to secure this top band to the bottom band. Once I do that, you'll notice once this is worn, this is just going to cover that up, so you're not going to see that. It's going to prevent this from flipping down because we tacked it up on the bottom, and you're still going to get the nice drape through the back. And that's it. You're all done.